Keanu Reeves stepped into the sprawling shopping mall just outside Barcelona with the quiet hope of blending into the rhythm of ordinary life. Dressed simply in a black jacket, worn boots, and jeans that carried the soft creases of long travel, he looked more like a thoughtful tourist than a global movie icon. The mall itself was a cathedral of glass and light, sunlight pouring through the high ceilings and reflecting off polished marble floors. Spanish music hummed softly from hidden speakers, mixing with laughter, footsteps, and the low murmur of conversations in multiple languages. For the first few minutes, it worked. Keanu moved calmly from one storefront to another, pausing at a bookstore window, briefly admiring a display of handcrafted leather bags, and breathing in the scent of roasted coffee drifting from a nearby cafe. It was the kind of simple moment he valued most. No scripts, no interviews, no expectations, just anonymity. But anonymity never lasts long for someone like him. A teenager stopped abruptly near an escalator, staring a second too long. Her eyes widened. She whispered something urgently to her friend. Phones began to rise, one by one, like a slow wave. Someone murmured his name, not loudly, but loud enough. Keanu. Keanu Reeves. The sound carried. Within moments, the air changed. People turned. Conversations broke off mid-sentence. A ripple of excitement moved through the crowd as recognition spread faster than mall security could react. Keanu felt it immediately, the familiar tightening in his chest, the invisible spotlight snapping on. He kept walking, hoping the attention would fade. His posture relaxed but alert, eyes forward. It didn't fade. A small group began following him at a distance, pretending not to stare while filming openly. Whispers grew into excited chatter. A man called out his name with a grin, asking for a photo. Keanu offered a polite nod but didn't stop. He wanted peace today. Just once. But inside, frustration stirred. He wasn't angry, yet, but the pressure was building, layer by layer. Security guards watched from afar, uncertain. He wasn't causing trouble. The fans weren't either, at least not officially. Still, the space around him shrank, and every step became heavier. Keanu stopped near a luxury fashion store, considering whether to enter and escape the crowd. He hesitated. Entering might make things worse, but staying in the open felt unbearable. Another phone flashed directly in his face. He exhaled slowly, jaw tightening for just a second before he masked it again. This was supposed to be a quiet visit, a human moment. Instead, it was quickly turning into something else, something tense, public, and unpredictable. And as Keanu stepped toward the store entrance, unaware of what awaited inside, the fragile balance of his patience was already beginning to crack. The moment Keanu Reeves stepped inside the luxury boutique, the noise of the mall softened, replaced by a curated calm. The air smelled faintly of expensive perfume and polished leather. Soft instrumental music played from hidden speakers, and warm spotlighting illuminated. Mannequins dressed in sharply tailored suits and designer coats. It was the kind of place that thrived on exclusivity, quiet voices, measured movements, and an unspoken hierarchy. For a brief second, Keanu felt relief. The glass doors slid shut behind him, muting the chaos outside. Only a handful of customers occupied the space, each browsing slowly, deliberately. Keanu drifted toward a rack of jackets, running his fingers lightly along the fabric. He appreciated craftsmanship. Always had. He wasn't here to impress anyone, just to look. Maybe buy something comfortable, something real. That's when he noticed the way the salesperson looked at him. The man stood behind a sleek counter, impeccably dressed, his posture stiff with practiced elegance. His eyes flicked over Keanu from head to toe, lingering on the worn boots, the faded jeans, the unbranded jacket. The look wasn't curious. It was dismissive. Keanu pretended not to notice. A few seconds later, the salesperson approached, smile tight and rehearsed. "May I help you?" he asked, his tone polite on the surface but edged with something colder beneath. Not welcoming, evaluating. "I'm just looking," Keanu replied calmly. The salesperson nodded, but didn't leave. Instead, he gestured subtly toward a display near the entrance. "Our premium collection is over there," he said, pausing. "Some of these items are quite expensive. The implication hung in the air. Keanu looked up slowly. "I'm aware," he said evenly. The salesperson's smile thinned. "Of course. We usually recommend booking a private consultation for serious buyers." A nearby customer glanced over, sensing the tension. Another shifted uncomfortably, pretending to study a scarf while listening closely. Keanu felt a familiar heat rise behind his eyes. Not rage. Not yet, but something sharper. Disrespect. He had faced critics, interviewers, executives, and fans. But this quiet judgment based on appearance, hit differently. It wasn't loud or aggressive. It was small, precise, and intentional. Keanu picked up a jacket from the rack. "This one," he said. "What's it made of?" The salesperson stiffened. "Sir, I'm just doing my job." "No," Keanu replied quietly. "You're doing something else." The air in the boutique shifted. The soft music continued playing, oblivious. Outside, muffled noise pressed against the glass walls, waiting. Inside, a line had been crossed, subtle but irreversible. And as Keanu took a step closer to the counter, the patience he'd been holding onto since entering the mall began to slip, setting the stage for words that would soon echo far beyond the walls of the store. The boutique fell into a strained silence, the kind that made every breath feel louder than it should have been. Keanu Reeves stood still for a moment, his eyes fixed on the salesperson, as if weighing something unseen. Years of discipline, humility, and restraint held him in place, but they were losing ground to the slow burn of humiliation. "You've been judging me since I walked in," Keanu said at last, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Not my words, not my behavior, just how I look." The salesperson crossed his arms, defensive now. "Sir, if you feel uncomfortable, you're free to leave," he replied, the polite mask cracking just enough to reveal irritation. A soft gasp came from somewhere near the shoe display. Phones were already out again. Someone had started recording. Keanu noticed, but didn't care anymore. Uncomfortable. He repeated, letting out a short, humorless laugh. "You talk about comfort like it's stitched into these jackets. But respect costs nothing." The salesperson scoffed. "This store caters to a certain clientele." That word, clientele, hit like a spark to dry paper. Keanu stepped closer, not aggressively, but with intent. His voice rose, no longer sharp but unmistakably firm. "Then maybe you should. Learn that money doesn't come with manners, and neither does ignorance with class." A ripple moved through the boutique. Shoppers froze. One woman covered her mouth. Another man lowered his phone, suddenly unsure if he should be filming or backing away. The salesperson's face flushed red. "You think you're better than everyone because of a price tag." Keanu continued, the words coming faster now. "Because from where I'm standing, all I see is someone hiding arrogance behind a chute." Gasps echoed. The salesperson snapped back, "You're being disrespectful." Keanu shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "I'm being honest. You just don't like how it sounds." His voice carried farther than he intended, spilling beyond the boutique's entrance. People outside the store turned toward the sound. A security guard glanced over. "You judged me in seconds," Keanu went on, anger finally breaking through the calm. "You looked at my clothes and decided I didn't belong here. That says more about you than it ever could about me." To respond, but nothing came out. Keanu exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "I've worked with people who had nothing and people who had." Keanu realized what he'd done. He felt it instantly, the shift from private confrontation to public spectacle. His chest tightened, adrenaline surging. Part of him wanted to walk away, to end it there. But the damage was already done. The salesperson stood frozen, humiliated and furious. Shoppers stared, caught between shock and fascination. Cameras rolled. And as Keanu turned toward the exit, the weight of his words followed him, spilling out of the boutique, into the mall, and straight into the waiting storm of attention that would soon explode, far beyond Spain. The moment Keanu Reeves stepped out of the boutique, the tension that had been simmering in the mall erupted. The raised voices from inside had drawn a crowd. And now dozens of people stood gathered in a loose semicircle. Phones held high, lenses pointed toward him like a wall of unblinking eyes. The quiet hum of shopping had transformed into excited murmurs. Whispers overlapping in multiple languages. What happened? Someone asked. Did he lose his temper? Another voice replied. Keanu paused just outside the store, blinking once as the full weight of the situation hit him. His words, meant for one person, had spilled into a public arena. He could feel the adrenaline in his veins, his heart beating harder than he wanted to admit. He straightened his jacket, trying to reclaim some composure. But the crowd was already feeding on the moment. 2 more security guards approached quickly, their expressions firm, professional, and suspicious. One of them, taller and broad-shouldered, raised a hand. "Sir, we are going to need you to step aside," he said in Spanish, then repeated it in English when he saw Keanu hesitate. Keanu nodded. "I'm fine," he replied, keeping his voice measured. There was a misunderstanding inside the store. The guard glanced past him at the visibly shaken salesperson, who had now stepped out as well. The employee began speaking rapidly in Spanish, gesturing toward Keanu, his tone heated and accusatory. Though Keanu didn't understand every word, the message was clear enough. He was being painted as the aggressor. "That's not what happened," Keanu said, his patience thinning again. "I was disrespected." The second guard folded his arms. "Sir, please lower your voice." Keanu let out a sharp breath. "I am calm," he said, though the tightness in his jaw suggested otherwise. "But you're not listening." The crowd pressed closer. Someone called out his name excitedly. Another shouted something unintelligible. Phones zoomed in, capturing every expression, every twitch of frustration. Keanu felt boxed in, misunderstood, and exposed all at once. "So this is how it works," he said, unable to stop himself. "Someone treats you like you don't belong. And when you respond, you're the problem." The guard's expression hardened. "Sir, you're causing a disturbance." "That disturbance started long before I opened my mouth," Keanu snapped back, his voice rising again despite his efforts to control it. "This is unbelievable," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else, as security escorted him toward a quieter corner of the mall. The crowd followed at a distance, unwilling to let the drama end. Keanu could hear their whispers, feel their judgment and curiosity pressing in from all sides. What had started as a simple shopping trip had now turned into a public confrontation, one where truth and perception were no longer the same. And as flashing phones captured every second, Keanu realized that the real consequences were only just beginning. The father Keanu Reeves was guided away from the crowd. The quieter the mall became, the polished floors gave way to a less glamorous corridor, service doors, muted lighting, the faint echo of footsteps. The noise of voices and camera shutters slowly faded, replaced by an uncomfortable silence that pressed in on him from all sides. For the first time since the incident began, he was alone with his thoughts. The security guards stopped near a plain wall, speaking briefly to each other in low tones. Keanu leaned back against the cool surface, exhaling deeply. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the release of tension he had been holding for far too long. He stared at the floor, replaying the scene again and again in his mind, each word echoing louder than it had when spoken. He knew how this would look. A famous actor losing his temper. Insults caught on camera. Context stripped away. Intention flattened into a headline. He had seen it happen to others. Now it was happening to him. The irony wasn't lost on him, and it stung. Keanu rubbed his face slowly, dragging his hands down over his eyes. He thought about the salesperson's expression, not just anger, but humiliation. He thought about the shoppers, caught between shock and excitement, turning a human moment into entertainment. Most of all, he thought about himself, about the line he had crossed. "I should have walked away," he murmured quietly. One of the guards glanced at him but said nothing. Keanu straightened, pushing himself off the wall. The anger had burned itself out, leaving behind a heavy, reflective calm. He knew he had been disrespected. That truth hadn't changed. But he also knew that words, once released, could wound far beyond their target. After a few minutes, The guards informed him he was free to leave through a side exit. No charges. No official complaint. Just a warning and a suggestion to avoid the main floor for now. Keanu nodded, thanking them sincerely. They seemed surprised by the courtesy. As he walked toward the exit, he passed a mirror mounted near a service door. He stopped and looked at his reflection, tired eyes, tense shoulders. A man caught between public image and private emotion. Fame had given him many things, but it had also stolen moments like this, twisting them into spectacles. Later that evening, alone in his hotel room, the incident replayed endlessly online. Clips cut short, captions exaggerated, opinions divided. Some defended him, others condemned him. He read none of it. Instead, he sat quietly, staring out at the city lights, reflecting on how easily patience could fracture when respect was denied, and how quickly a single moment could overshadow years of humility. He knew tomorrow would bring questions, headlines, and judgment. But tonight, there was only one truth he couldn't escape: being human, even in frustration, came with consequences. And the real test wasn't avoiding mistakes, it was learning from them.